Let's talk about dealing with hardships. Hello there, my name is Katie May, and I'm your guide to building a brand based on authenticity and connection. Whether you own a brand or a business, or you're just living through life, there's always going to be a time that we have to hit a hard point, right? And we have to figure out how we're going to react and what we are going to do to work through these emotions and not let them overwhelm and consume us. Now, I will say this is easier said than done. But the more that you practice this bone of actually like working through things instead of allowing them to overwhelm you, you start to learn a lot of really cool tips and tricks that work for you personally that might not work for me or other people. So, it's really cool. But there's a lot of the times where something crazy happens and you're like, how do I even start working through these emotions, right? Personally, I used to be someone that was super anxious all the time. I would sit there, I'd be quiet. If anybody told me that something was right, I would just take their word for it. And that is not who I am anymore, thanks to my ability to work through my own emotions and also create my own means of feeling safe and secure. So for instance, I went through a pretty emotional hardship dealing with my father. There was a pretty bad breakage in our relationship that caused us to not talk for many years, and we're still really not on talking basis. But working through that feeling of being forgotten and feeling isolated, it really did take a lot of years. And I don't think that any of us should ever rush our healing process. If it takes 2 months, great. If it takes 12 years, also great. Like, it has no real meaning to who you are as a person if it has to take longer. It just means that it's like your journey and your story to actually work through those emotions. So how you even start is you have to actually learn to feel your feelings. That's going to come through incorporating more mindfulness into your daily practices, or even just weekly or monthly practices, wherever you need to start. Mindfulness, of course, can look like sitting down and meditating, but it can also look like journaling. It can look like going on a walk and really just connecting with your breath and feeling the weight of your feet as it presses down on each foot into the concrete. It can be going to the beach and sitting in the sand and feeling the world around you, or it can even be just sitting in grass and letting your toes like kind of scratch up the grass, you know? Whatever can get you connected to yourself and to the world around you is an opportunity to practice mindfulness. And the more that you practice mindfulness, the more that you'll see your thoughts and emotions come and go in different patterns throughout your life. And as you start to recognize these patterns, you start to realize just kind of how your mindset is and how much your mindset actually impacts your day-to-day life. For instance, I was someone who was super anxious all the time, and coming from feeling isolated and anxious, I continued to relive patterns in my life that kept me isolated and anxious. For instance, if I would walk into a room of coworkers and they would instantly start laughing over a video they were watching together, my isolated and anxious brain was like, oh my gosh, they're all making fun of me. Like, how could they make fun of me? They don't even know me yet. And just other silly stuff like that. And it wasn't silly for me in the moment. It was my entire reality. So it really did suck. But thinking back on it now, I'm like, all right, girl, like, you were just hurting and projecting, and that's totally normal, but we have to figure out a way through it. So how I started to really heal this anxiety attachment in my life is I had to distance myself away from a lot of the normal activities that I would include myself in. So for instance, like, I would always try to socialize and hang out with people. I feel like it was in an attempt to gain their approval instead of just like gaining friendship from them, which is like, I don't know, I guess not that great. Oh, sorry, I thought I saw something. But I had to start distancing myself away from them, and I had to really start taking care of me more and finding time to create that mindfulness. So I took my hour lunch break by myself in my car. I would drive to a different park almost every week. I would listen to podcasts, I would play at the park, I would eat my lunch, I would just breathe and look at the world around me. I would paint sometimes. Painting was my favorite, just like a little bit of watercolor. And over time, like, I don't think I noticed any significant differences in my life that made me be like, oh my gosh, this is working. But over the course of the next like couple years, I was like, oh hey, like, these people are laughing in a room with me, and I'm no longer thinking that it's about me. I'm not getting a surge of anxiety and a rush of adrenaline thinking that I'm the one that's being mocked and laughed at. Like, I now can see that they're all watching a video together, so it's more understandable that they're laughing at the video and not at me. So it's just, I don't know, a really cool journey. Coming from someone who is chronically anxious and chronically depressed for most of their life. I've struggled with PTSD for some time, just due to some minor traumatic events that happened in my childhood. And it was hard because a lot of people would shame me for using those terms, even though it definitely described what I was going through and what my therapist and I had agreed on. And I think it's hard because a lot of those people, they'd be like, well, I have anxiety and I have depression and it doesn't look like that. And it's like, that's cool. That's your own walk of life. It doesn't mean that you don't have anxiety and depression, but it means that we're two separate beings that react to the same feeling a little bit differently because of all of our past experiences accumulating in this moment now. So I think it's hard when you're trying to heal and you're using these terms with other people around you and they're not really supportive or engaging, and they think that you talking about your experience is also diminishing theirs, because that was a lot of people in my life, because I was probably doing the same thing without even realizing it. And I think the more time that we can spend truly connecting with ourselves and a lot of those really, really hard emotions like anxiety and depression, that we're actually able to figure out ways to move through them that actually work for us. So me sitting down and journaling every day, that doesn't work for me. I've tried to force myself to do it so many times and it just does not work out. But forcing myself to journal one day, go on a walk the next, sit down and breathe and just lay on the ground for a while the next day, and cycling through whatever it feels like my body needs in that moment feels so much better than actually forcing myself to do something continuously because I think it's going to help me. In my experience, that hasn't helped, that hasn't worked. So if it works for you, totally cool. That just hasn't been my experience. So I want other people to know they're out there that like everybody's experience looks different, because everybody's experience leading up to this current emotion and feeling has been completely different. There might be similarities, there might be some differences, but for the most part, this is your own individual story. So I really, really encourage you that if you're dealing with some hard emotions and hard feelings, to create some mindfulness in your life. Go on a walk, start to journal, feel the like ground beneath your feet. That one is one of my favorites. Really get grounded so you can start to look at your thoughts and your emotions without judgment, so that you can begin to see your mindset in different scenarios and begin to work past them. If you want any help working through anything in your business, definitely schedule a one-on-one free branding call with me. I'll put the link in my bio to my website. And if you have any questions, shoot them in the comments below, hit me up on Instagram, and let me know what are some of the hardships that you are working through. Peace.